Open world settings have become something of a trend for video games in this current generation of gaming. Video games are as frequently open world now as they used to be first-person shooters a decade ago, or platformers in the era of Mario and Sonic. We're not complaining, we love open world games, and in the past few years, we've been lucky enough to play landmark titles that have pushed the boundaries of the genre in ways we could have only dreamt of before. Skyrim, The Witcher 3, The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Metal Gear Solid 5, The Phantom Pain. There are just too many to name. And thankfully enough, there's a lot more to come in the near future. 2017 has been an excellent year for open world games, with titles such as Horizon Zero Dawn and the aforementioned Breath of the Wild having met universal critical acclaim, and it looks like 2018 will be just the same. So without further ado, let's begin. Ghost of Tsushima. Sony opened Paris Games Week by showcasing the often rumored new game from Sucker Punch. It was finally revealed and turned out to be Ghost of Tsushima, a game focused on samurai and battling unwinnable battles. The actual theme is incredibly interesting and definitely something we've never seen from Sucker Punch, known primarily for Sly Cooper and Infamous. More gameplay for Ghost of Tsushima will likely be showcased next year. No release date has been announced, but you can probably look forward to it next year. Monster Hunter World. Monster Hunter World looks like a major departure from formula for the series, and while it definitely looks like now might be the perfect time for newcomers to jump in, it still looks like this is very much going to be a proper Monster Hunter experience. The series makes its debut on the PS4 and the Xbox One with its first non-handheld release in a long time, and the boundaries that are opened up makes this upcoming Capcom release a mouth-watering prospect. Red Dead Redemption 2. This is probably among the most highly anticipated games of 2018, period. Red Dead Redemption 2 was announced in late 2016, and even though we've heard and seen very little of the game since then, it remains at the top of most of our lists for next year. 2010's Red Dead Redemption was one of the very best games of its generation, and given Rockstar's pedigree over the years, it's easy to argue that its sequel will be just as masterful. Spider-Man. Insomniac's Spider-Man has caught the attention of PlayStation fans in a way none of us would have predicted a few years back. Their portrayal of Spider-Man looks like the perfect video game adaptation of the famous web-slinger, and Insomniac seem to be treating the universe and the characters with the respect that they deserve, at least based on what we know so far. Above anything else, we can simply not wait to swing on webs across the open-world setting of New York City. Far Cry 5. The Far Cry series has found a great formula with Far Cry 3, and its sequel was successful in improving upon that already solid framework. But rather than going with the tried and the true, Ubisoft are choosing a different approach with Far Cry 5. The upcoming sequel promises a much more fluid open-world experience that is built around emergent gameplay aspects similar to games like Breath of the Wild and The Phantom Pain. With several series staples such as radio towers and the minimap also missing, this truly promises to be an intriguing experience. Final Fantasy VII Remake. Final Fantasy VII Remake has been an upcoming game for a few years now, and even now it remains uncertain whether it will actually launch in 2018 because there is every likelihood that it doesn't. That said, we're hoping at least for some substantial gameplay footage in the near future. Considering the fact that the original Final Fantasy VII was, in some measure, an open-world game, it stands to reason that Square Enix will want to build on the aspects and make it a more elaborate feature for this game. Anthem. Anthem is not the kind of title you would have expected developers BioWare to make 5 years ago. The Canadian studio has usually been known for storytelling-focused RPGs such as Baldur's Gate, Dragon Age, and Mass Effect. And while the focus of next year's Anthem is decidedly different, it still looks like a fascinating title. The setting in particular looks dangerous and beautiful, and traversing the open world looks like it could be a lot of fun. Metro Exodus. Metro Exodus isn't going to be an open-world game per se. This is still very much a story-focused game that constantly marches forward, both in narrative and in setting. However, developers for A Games have promised that the game will feature less of levels full of dark and narrow corridors and focus more on large maps for players to get across. These large areas within themselves will offer players plenty of freedom, so given the unique brand of gameplay the Metro series is known for, it should be quite an interesting experience. Days Gone. The PS4's 2018 lineup is full of heavyweights, but Days Gone has to be among the 2 or 3 most anticipated games in that lineup. Every second of footage we've seen of the game so far looks enthralling and exciting, while the promise of emergent open-world gameplay with proper coexisting system mechanics makes the experience seem that much sweeter. Zombies aren't exactly newcomers to video games, but we're still quite excited about the unique ways Days Gone promises to use this well-worn setting. Cyberpunk 2077. Cyberpunk 2077 is another one of those games that was announced a number of years ago, but still seems to be so far away from release. Not only is it quite likely that it doesn't even launch next year, we also seem to know very little about this game. That said, given CD Projekt Red's immense success with The Witcher 3, it seems safe to assume that Cyberpunk 2077 will be an open-world game in the same vein. It should be interesting to see how well CD Projekt Red can build a world in a setting so vastly different from what they're used to. Shadow of the Colossus PS4. Shadow of the Colossus is a PS2 classic and is without a doubt one of the best games of its generation. So the fact that it's receiving a full-fledged remake treatment for the PS4 next year has us excited beyond imagination. Shadow of the Colossus for the PS4 looks every bit as hauntingly beautiful and breathtakingly epic as we remembered it on the PS2, and we simply cannot wait to scale those magnificent beasts and wander those empty lands once again next year. Shenmue 3. The official announcement of Shenmue 3 in 2015 was a dream come true for countless people. It had been years since Shenmue 2 had launched, and the series was all but dead, and yet it was confirmed that through fan funding, Shenmue 3 would become a reality sooner than later. Though we're still a ways off from the release, Shenmue 3 is still very much happening, and we're waiting with giddy anticipation for the day that we finally get our hands on it. Crackdown 3. It was a shame Crackdown 3 couldn't launch in 2017 because it looks like a great game. Then again, maybe it's better that the developers are choosing to spend more time on perfecting their game. Either way, from all of the footage we've seen so far, Crackdown 3 looks like the kind of excellent exclusive title the Xbox One has been craving for. An open world ripe for exploration and carnage is never easy to turn down. Sea of Thieves. Sea of Thieves is quite an interesting concept, and while the idea of a shared world always online game might not seem like a good one to a few people, the footage that we've seen of this game so far seems to show quite a lot of promise. Developers Rare haven't had the best track record in recent years, sadly enough, so while we are optimistic about this title, we're cautiously so. That said, if Sea of Thieves can properly deliver on the potential it's shown thus far, we'll be in for quite the game. State of Decay 2. State of Decay may not have been the most high-profile exclusive the Xbox consoles have seen over the last few years, but as anyone who's played it will tell you, it was one hell of a game. It's no surprise then that we're quite excited about the upcoming State of Decay 2. The sequel promises to be a larger and more polished upgrade to its predecessor, with the inclusion of tougher choices to make in all walks of gameplay and a new co-op mode as well. Kingdom Hearts 3. Kingdom Hearts 3 probably won't be a fully fledged sandbox open-world RPG, not like, say, Final Fantasy XV was. The upcoming role-playing game is going to feature a large number of worlds from the Square Enix and Disney universes that players will be visiting, so while we can't expect a large single map for the entire game, we can safely expect plenty of worlds we visit will be large, open areas, kind of like mini open worlds. The footage we've seen of this game so far definitely seems to suggest the same, and we can't wait to see just how in-depth this mechanic will be when the game finally launches next year. Darksiders 3. Darksiders is making an unexpected and quite welcome return in 2018, and we couldn't be more thrilled about it. Though the series' track record doesn't suggest the upcoming sequel will have an enormous open world, we can be sure that the game's world will be populated with plenty of things to do. Darksiders 3 carries the same visual style that lent its predecessor such personality and offers to be built around the same incredible mix of combat and Zelda-like dungeons, so it's fair to say that we're quite excited to get our hands on this game. Skull and Bones. Who knew when the naval segments of Assassin's Creed 3 were first discovered that they would go on to become such a hugely popular mechanic? Black Flag took that gameplay mechanic further in incredible ways, and now Ubisoft are ready to take the next step forward with a new game from a new IP based entirely around naval warfare. Skull and Bones is going to be an MMO, a shared world online experience, so we cannot expect the same dedicated single-player effort that we loved Black Flag for. That said, we're still quite thrilled that we get to play a game built solely around the concept of being the ultimate pirate captain on the Seven Seas. Dynasty Warriors 9. Dynasty Warriors 9 promises to feature the same massive battles that the series has come to be known for, but this time, the experience is going to have a lot more to it than just that. Dynasty Warriors 9 is going to be set in an open world setting, which will be where you spend the bulk of your time outside of battles. We know for a fact that there will be dynamic day and night and weather cycles in the game, but what we're more curious to see is how developers Omega Force managed to take the elements of the Dynasty Warriors series and make them work in an open world setting. Biomutant. As a fully open world action RPG that has you playing as a raccoon in a world of mutated creatures, Biomutant goes one step beyond the freedom that most open-world games afford players these days. It promises to do so by giving you the ability to interact with the world in a completely non-linear fashion, while also letting you customize your character down to the tiniest detail. In addition, Biomutant will let players directly control how the story plays out, and even how often it interjects with the gameplay. These things sound great on paper, but we're curious to see how exactly they're implemented into the game itself. Dual Universe. Not much is tangibly known about Dual Universe, but everything we have heard sounds interesting. An open-world game set in space, combining elements of EVE, No Man's Sky, and Minecraft? That sounds like a wonder game to us, if it's done right, that is. Let's hope it doesn't end up becoming a victim of its own ambition, as such games so often seem to do. And that'll be about it for this one. If you guys like what we're doing at Gaming Vault, please consider subscribing to our channel, and I'll see you guys on the next video.